Hi there, I am Sarah Jane Case, and I'm the host of your new favorite show, Enneagram and Coffee. This podcast is dedicated to discussing the beautiful and hard parts of being human. We discuss the Enneagram, a personality map that is taking over the world, for increased self-compassion, personal growth, and healthier relationships. Listen to Enneagram and Coffee on the iHeart app or wherever you get your podcasts.
There is no rest for the weary in Rhysand's inner circle. Barely a day after returning from visiting the bone carver, Rhysand sets off with Feyre in tow to visit the Weaver in the heart of Prythian. Is Feyre up to the challenge of identifying a lost object in the Weaver's cottage using untrained detection skills? Or will she succumb to her human fear and become the Weaver's next meal?
The views expressed by the hosts are entirely their own and in no way represent the thoughts or intentions of the original author. This podcast is a discussion shared to spark thought and conversation on the characters and themes of this novel.
Though the hosts speak mostly within the constraints of this book, series spoilers may be discussed with or without warning. Explicit language as well as themes of sex, violence, abuse, self-harm, and depression will reoccur throughout this podcast. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to BookTok for BookTok, a podcast where we deep dive into the writing of your favorite novels.
This season, we're exploring Sarah J. Maas's most beloved novel in the Court of Thorns and Roses series. This is Jac.
And I'm Amy. This week, we're discussing chapters 19 through 21 in A Court of Mist and Fury.
This week, we ask ourselves, is Rhysand selfish, and are his actions redeemable?
Themes we see are sex as power and prey and predator. We begin chapter 19 with Rhys and Feyre's return from the bone carver and Rhys's clever plan to test Feyre by taking her to the Weaver. On the surface, this may seem like a lot of plot, but let's take a moment to dig into some of the juicy details.
When Feyre walks in, she sees that Mor is not wearing a dress. And additionally, Cassian is compared to a dog, when normally the women are the ones compared to animals. So what's up with this role reversal here, all within a few lines? Well, I think it represents Feyre feeling off-kiltered. She just came back from a traumatic meeting, and now she's trying to regain some sense of normality, and she's adjusting. Don't worry, people. Women go back to being compared to animals.
Oh boy, do they.
I just hate my notes but it's true.
It's true.
It's coming. But in an empowering way. No.
Sure.
No.
When Rhys reveals to the group that he plans to go to Hybern and nullify the cauldron with the Book of Breathings, Feyre thinks, quote, "Some cowardly, pathetic part of me was already trembling." This is human Feyre, awakened by fear and the need to survive. She plays a big role in these coming chapters as we encounter the Weaver.
I wonder if the evolution of human Feyre to Fae Feyre isn't about her overcoming her fear, but it's embracing it as her fuel. So because we already know that everyone in the Night Court has experienced fear one way or another, but the difference is that they use it. So maybe being a Fae is more about channeling that fear.
I think that is a lovely thought, and we're going to talk more about that later in the episode.
It's a lovely thought.
It's a lovely thought.
It's just a
I do
in a nice little sundress.
I do agree with you, and I do think we see this more as we get into the Weaver chapters.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Rhys then reveals his plan to test Feyre's detection abilities because of her connection to all 7 High Lords. It is here that Rhys tells the group that he wants to see if Feyre can find a valuable object of his that he's been missing for a considerably long time. We know from later in the book that the object is Rhys's mother's ring, and that his mother had the ring taken by the Weaver so that Rhys's wife would have to prove herself strong or smart enough to retrieve it.
This is like Ravenclaw on crack, right? Like, you know how like the Ravenclaws have to answer a riddle every time they get into their house?
Oh, that's right. I totally forgot that.
Yeah.
But yes.
I think about that a lot and how much I would not be okay. I am not a Ravenclaw. It's like having to prove yourself for jewelry. No, my essence is proof enough.
You know what? As a woman with many sisters-in-law, I appreciate that Rhys's mother put his would-be wife to the test.
Hannah's listening.
I love Hannah.
But let's put everyone to the test.
But let's put everybody to a test. I expect to be tested before I get married.
It'll just be you and me running, like, me with the stopwatch next to you, like, run, Amy. I can't. I'm not a physical individual. I can squat. I can squat for their love.
You would do that without a test requirement.
Squatting gets me butt.
Right,
Butt
exactly.
gets me love.
Exactly.
Love gets me squat. Squat for the love.
It's the saddest mantra I've ever heard. So let's stop for a moment to think about how many people actually know about Rhys's mother's ring. Moore is the first to react in this scene. As family, I'm going to guess that she's aware of Rhys's mother's terms for this ring. This is on top of Moore already knowing that Feyre and Rhys are mates. Though Moore gets mad and asks if Rhys is out of his mind, she does not tell him to not go through with it.
I didn't pick that up. She did not say.
Yeah, but she didn't.
Because Moore knows that's
right.
I did not click that together. Even when we were reviewing our notes, I was like, yeah, huh? But oh my God, bitch.
Well,
she could have waited.
I think that there's more to this ring, and we'll talk about it in a little bit. Rhys does stop Cassian from speaking at this point, and Azriel tells Rhys to find another way to test Feyre. We know they don't know that Feyre and Rhys are mates, but do they know the details about the ring? I imagine so, since they spent so much time together over the last 500 years.
Yeah, I can't imagine that. Like, they've all been intimate. They've all had sex with a woman, like different women in the same room.
Yeah, they have to know.
You don't think that,
ring,
like,
right?
in the middle of that, they're not like, hey, by the way, Cass has.
Mom hid the ring.
Mommy hid the ring. Tradesies.
I wonder if this is where they begin to suspect that there's a mating bond between their High Lord and Feyre.
Mm-hmm.
In my mind, it is. Conveniently, Amren's not here, which works out in everybody's favor since she might want the ring for herself. JK, she doesn't want to marry Rhys. It's fine.
No, but she'd steal the ring regardless. She's
the
like,
ring.
good job, Feyre. The rules weren't that Feyre keeps the ring.
Fair.
Rah.
I see what you did there.
I did it last time, another episode.
I know.
It's gonna keep happening. At the very least, only Moore knows, right? At most, everyone knows. So even if Cassian and Azriel don't know that Rhys's ring is a test for his future wife, they do know in general that it's a bad idea. And I know I'm recapping here, but, it's a train of thought. Work with me here. The fact that Rhys is silencing Cassian and Azriel isn't great. He's actively withholding knowledge from Feyre. After all, this book, my notes here. So after all, this book is called A Court of No One Tells Feyre Anything, also known as ACOMAF. Say it.
ACONOTFA.
A Court of No One.
ACONOTFA.
ACONOTFA.
There we go.
Yeah.
I like the ring of that.
Yeah. Okay, so just think of it this way. If knowledge is power, as we've discussed, then what does it mean for Rhysand to be the most powerful High Lord in history? With that in mind, it makes sense that he's able to read minds because that's his way of gaining knowledge. And that makes sense that he's withholding knowledge because he's hoarding power. I'm outraged. The timing of this. Feyre just got back from the bone carver. She is clearly still trying to cope. She is only just able to go back underneath the mountain in general, and now Rhys wants her to go to the Weaver the next day. Like, totally chill. It's under the pretense that Feyre and Rhysand have to go the next day because they need to act quickly. They need to hurry before Hybern can do anything. But if that's the case, Rhysand can literally hide anything throughout their home or anywhere in Velaris. They can even use Amren to ward the ring. Or you can even have Azriel and Cassian to test Feyre by, I don't know, like hunting her or something. Like there's other ways that Rhysand could have tested her.
I agree with you. It seems a little ridiculous, actually, that they go straight to the Weaver.
Right? There's no breather.
Nope.
There's no downtime.
Nope.
Like, I bet her legs I bet she's still sore.
From walking up a hill the day before.
She was hiking.
Yeah.
I need at least 2 days recovery. 3 days. The second day, you're even more sore.
This is true.
And she's supposed to, go through the Weaver's place? No. It's not surprising that Rhysand's doing this right after Feyre revealed to him that she saw a little boy, aka their future son. This shows that Rhysand has purely selfish motives and is willing to risk Feyre's mental well-being for Rhysand to be one step closer connected to Feyre.
I feel like this mirrors Tamlin. The selfish motives. I mean, that's the only reason why Tamlin brought Feyre to the Spring Court is because he needed her to break the curse.
You're right. Like, Tamlin was very much like, hurry up, I need you to fall in love with me.
Mm-hmm.
And Rhysand's very much like, hurry up, I need you to fall in love with me.
Yeah, kind of, right?
Yeah. Dicks.
Yeah. Men.
Fae men.
Fails.
Fails.
During this exchange about the Weaver, Rhys looks to Feyre and asks her to make the choice of whether she will or will not face the Weaver. Note that Feyre projects that, quote, Rhys merely shrugged and looked to me to let me choose. Always. It was always my choice with him these days.
Bullshit. No. Rhys isn't giving Feyre a choice on whether to be with him or not. By sending Feyre to the Weaver and not telling her what the ring means, he's removing Feyre's choice on how committed she's willing to be. Rhys is using this test to feed his own insecurities. And let me ask you this. If Rhysand was more sure about Feyre, like how he is after Starfall, then would he have made her test her powers at the Weaver? I don't believe so. I think that this is an outlet for his own insecurities, and it's really a way of Rhysand to punish Feyre for not being on his timeline yet.
I think also that it's Rhys forcing Feyre's hand. Like, she doesn't know the significance of this ring.
No.
And what if she didn't fall in love with him and he told her, well, you got my mother's ring and these are the conditions of the ring.
Right? Like, she never got the choice of saying, you know what? I love you so much. I'm going to risk myself to do this.
Right.
That would have been far more meaningful than tricking her.
Right.
Because he's insecure. He's not sure on whether or not she'll say yes to him.
And we know from later on that Rhys is insecure because he believes no one would ever want to love him, given that they would be hunted.
Or no one would want to love him because he keeps pulling bullshit like this.
Also that.
Rhys, I feel like your reasons of worry, wrong stuff. You should be worried, but for different reasons. It's kind of a douche.
A little bit. Ironically, later in this chapter, Rhys and the Inner Circle leave to who knows where and don't give Feyre a choice to go with them. They assume she needs rest or ultimately use that excuse to continue on conversations without her present. Feyre did not consent to being left out, but she just so happens to be tired that she might have turned them down anyway. Even Feyre observes that Rhys, quote, hadn't let me go back to the spring court during those 2 visits, so her opportunities to choose are limited, and she's aware of it.
You cannot say, I have a choice, and then, quote, he hadn't let me, so close together, without noticing how absolutely contradicting those 2 statements are. But Feyre is the queen of doing that.
She's the queen of contradictions.
She really is. I wish she could hear herself.
I do too. I mean, and what we're seeing here then is that there's an illusion of choice. Whether or not Feyre really has a choice is not a topic of conversation. By having the illusion of choice, she, being Feyre, will automatically pick whatever benefits the group because A, Feyre's a sucker for helping people, and B, she only resists things when Feyre is told what to do.
I get that, though.
What do you mean?
I'm pretty go with the flow until someone tells me what to do.
I think we're all like that to some extent.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm like that. Don't tell me what to do. Let me make my own choice.
Look, I'll gladly plan your spring court party, but don't tell me.
I will not plan any parties now.
I will not plan a single party if I am told to plan a party. That's not true. I will plan a party if you tell me to.
You would enjoy that.
I would. Because I'm Tamlin's mate. I hate it.
It doesn't help that Feyre is tired and numb. She observes that Rhysand knows this. Quote, he knew precisely how tired I was, how I knew I should be quaking at the thought of this Weaver. But after the bone carver, what I'd revealed to it, I could feel nothing after all.
I just have this mental image of Rhysand in the corner, like rubbing his hands together, like, yes, tired and quaking, perfect time to add another traumatizing event to your life.
It is rather convenient, though.
And I don't feel like that's rather convenient for writing's sake. It makes sense for who Rhys is, though.
It does, which is why I pose this next question. To what extent is Rhysand using this to his advantage?
Okay, so as if, like, he knows that not only is Feyre emotionally weak, but also physically weak. So therefore, he realizes it's the perfect time for manipulation.
Right. I mean, I do this all the time at work because I'm a Slytherin. Mm-hmm. And if I get my boss at the right time when he's tired, he'll agree to anything because he just wants me to go away.
Yeah. I mean, they just came back from the bone carver. Like, they just winnowed in.
Yep.
And she just confessed all of her life secrets.
Yep.
Like, she can take a nap.
She could take a nap.
We can circle back on this.
But if she's feeling numb, she's not going to feel fear, so she'll agree to anything.
No, Rhysand. That should be if we named our episodes, it would be called No Rhysand.
No Rhysand. I agree. Keep in mind, Feyre's fatigue is also a defense mechanism on her part. She did just relive her death, and so her body is shutting down to help make her feel more safe.
She's also super out of shape and just like hiked a mountain, but also same.
Like 2 days in a row.
Yeah. She didn't even make it up all the way for the other one.
Actually, you know what? She didn't even try.
No, she just like was like, mountain. No, thank you. Again, I can relate.
I can do.
Like she's extremely out of shape and then hiked an entire ass mountain.
And then had to hike down. Sometimes that's harder.
That's a lot harder, Amy. And did he offer to carry her?
Probably not.
Or probably, I don't know. Either way, leave her alone.
Feyre was also just told that she has more powers than she realizes. She has, up until this point, been taught that having powers is bad. So Feyre's body has to shut down to prevent those powers from coming to fruition.
I would say it's more of a confirmation than a realization. Feyre's known about her powers for a while, and so did Tamlin, Lucian, and Ianthe. But now in the Night Court, everyone there is willing to talk about her powers out in the open. And that's a first for her, and that is a hell of an adjustment.
True. That would be kind of like whiplash.
Oh, yeah.
From going from never talking about anything to talking about, I guess, many more things, not everything yet.
Yeah, like this was originally our dirty little secret, and we should all be ashamed of it. And everyone's just like casually like, oh, yeah, so Feyre's got some super cool powers.
Yeah, we need to use those.
Yeah, and she's just, I need to stop saying the same thing over again.
Give her a break.
Just give her a break.
What I can't understand is what Rhys chooses to do next in this scene. Rhys gives Feyre a title. Now, as you may recall, Feyre hates titles, but Rhys gives her the title of Emissary to the Night Court for the Human Realm, a title Asriel informs us has not been used in 500 years.
Like Amy said, Rhysand knows that Feyre doesn't like titles, and although Feyre might not have told Rhysand that specifically, we can assume at this point that everything Feyre knows, Rhysand knows, especially if it's before he taught her how to shield her mind. So why is Rhysand giving Feyre a title? Is it for Feyre to help bridge the connection between her current Fae self and her old human self? Dare I ask, Amy?
I didn't think of it in the way that it might be a tool to help her do the mental work to connect her two halves together. I could see it. We know that Rhysand, to some extent, is considerate of Feyre. And this could be a peace offering or his way of helping her process things. I'm not quite sure.
We've been harping on Rhys because he's done a lot of crappy things, but I think giving her this job and title is probably the best thing he's done for her. And we get into it more a little bit later, but I could see it having other positive impacts that he planned.
Yeah, and I could see this also being connected to him giving her a salary, right? Rhys knows that Feyre doesn't have money and she doesn't want free handouts. So this is an avenue for him to be able to provide her with an income.
She's so unqualified to do any job that he has to bring back a job that's been gone for 500 years.
Sad. It's sad. It's like, oh, you're so underqualified. We have to make something up for you.
Yeah. You're the official caretaker of the cares.
So silly.
My brain stopped.
It's okay. It's okay. I like it. When Rhys gives Feyre this title, there is no reaction from Feyre in response to this, nor to the reasons that Rhysand is bestowing the title upon Feyre. Instead, without question, Feyre offers her family's estate as neutral territory and only questions how she could bring her sisters into this war after the fact. So what is with this reaction or lack thereof on Feyre's part?
Kind of circling back to what we just said, Feyre should hate this because it's another title, but for the first time, it's a title for a job. It's a position that will only have the value that she brings to it. It's something that's just hers and no one else's. I'm laughing because I write like these dumb notes on the side of my paper. Too bad Feyre does such a bad job of being an emissary.
Which you do say often.
Name one time she helped at all.
I can't.
Exactly.
I can't.
Do you want to know how bad of an emissary she is? She got one of the queens killed.
Yep.
So, and her sisters kidnapped.
I mean, she didn't get the queen killed. The queen made a choice that got the queen killed.
I'm just saying.
She still did a bad job.
Who was the other emissary? Jorian.
Was he the other emissary?
For Highburn, yeah. He was working with the queens.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You're right.
I'm just saying, better resume.
I feel like we've become sexist against our own.
No, it has nothing to do with her gender or sex.
I'm kidding.
It's everything to do with her own capabilities and general lack of anything. She has no people skills.
It's true. Let's also think about this acceptance of a title another way. Feyre's priority has always been to protect her family, and by extension, the human realm. This is ultimately why she wanted to help stop the blight in Thorns and Roses. On some level, though, Feyre knows her sisters do not want to be involved. In this way, Feyre is demonstrating a level of trust in her family and the belief that they will help her even if it's only to do the right thing or help the people in their village. Feyre's lack of aversion to this new title may in some way reflect feeling a connection or purpose to the title because it reflects the purpose she's always served, which is protecting her family. I think this is supported by the fact that when Feyre wakes the next morning, she doesn't wake from her nightmares. She's even kept her food down and in her belly all night. What is the change here? Previous to this, she was throwing up every night. Has being given purpose and a direction for how to keep her sister safe influenced this change in Feyre?
It's a good question, but I go back and forth with this section here because what I think that's interesting is that Feyre references Claire Better again. Quote, "I'll do it," I said. Claire Better's broken and nailed body flashed in my vision. And while Feyre's sisters will eventually become her main reason of wanting to protect people, Feyre is still using Claire's death as a motivator. That's partly because Feyre doesn't have to connect death with her sisters, and also because Feyre still hates herself.
I think also to some extent, Claire Better is still haunting Feyre, which is an exhibition of guilt. Feyre is still ruled by guilt. And until she's able to resolve that within herself, Claire Better is going to come first and foremost. Trying to not let that happen again is going to be more important than anything else. Or trying to prevent her own death is going to be more important than anything else.
I'm just trying to imagine, like, if there's someone in my world that I would give their name instead of my name.
Well, she didn't know what the consequences were.
No, I know, but like if I were to give a fake name.
It would be my name.
It would be your name. Hi, I'm Amy Chung.
I like how we both knew it at the same time.
It's like, realistically, it would be your name, which is ridiculous because obviously I'm not a Chung. And
you could have married a Chung.
I will be informally adopted. But it's, yeah, I'm sorry, Amy, I've killed you off in this situation.
Thank you. Rhys will bring me to Amarantha and I will die for you. In the morning, as they prepare to go to the Weaver's cottage, Feyre realizes that Rhysand's actions, specifically teaching Feyre how to read, has served multiple purposes. Now, not only should Feyre be able to read in general, but Rhys needed Feyre to be able to read because of the Book of Breathings. So I have a question here. Does Rhys having ulterior motives in his actions make him akin to Tamlin? Remember, Tamlin was going out to find ways to break Feyre's bargain with Rhysand without ever communicating that to her.
The main difference here is that we get to find out what Rhysand's motives are. Eventually, we find out why Tamlin was always away, but he never reveals that to Feyre until it's way too late. Versus Rhysand's motivations kind of come out as the victories come out. Rather than saying this makes Rhysand akin to Tamlin, I'm going to say that it makes Tamlin akin to Rhysand. So, I know, controversial. As we go on later in the book, we realize just how much Tamlin tries to make himself like Rhys. Even in the past 5 episodes, we keep calling out every single time that they're similar. What if it's Tamlin trying to emulate Rhys instead?
I think you're right. I've brought up before that at the end of the book, Tamlin comes to Highburn with a bandolier of Illyrian blades. He also has an inner circle adjacent. He has his own inner circle that mirrors Rhys's inner circle.
Which is what we also talked about in a past episode.
Exactly. So I could totally see it.
It's like, and again, like Rhysand was almost like the older brother that he didn't hate or was abusive towards.
Right.
So it would make sense that he's just trying to be Rhysand.
Yeah.
Lame.
He just wants to be loved and understood.
All right. Fine. I'll do it.
Feyre tells Rhysand that though she does not blame him, she, quote, prefers to be notified of any future schemes. Too bad Feyre's currently in one of Rhys's schemes, and he doesn't bother to tell her about it. But why? He could just be honest.
What is double bullshit here is that Rhysand does not agree. After Feyre calls him out, he does not agree that he'll keep her in the loop. All he says is, quote, duly noted. Meaning Rhysand has recognized Feyre's request, sees it, but knows that he's not going to comply with it because he's literally doing what she asked him not to do, which is not telling her what is happening. He's lying to her face / telling the truth.
It's a lie of omission because it's not convenient for him to be honest right now.
It's like what we've said before is that Rhysand never verbally lies.
Exactly. He's always speaking truthfully, but never revealing the whole truth.
Yeah. Duly noted.
That's so flippant. Watch me the next time I say that to you. I bet you want to slap me in the face.
I will just squeal aggressively towards you. You know what's funny is that I will be using this.
Yeah, no, we will be using it.
Oh yeah, 100% at work.
Duly noted.
Make sure you make these edits.
Noted.
Noted.
I do say that, actually.
It's noted.
Yeah.
I'm not doing shit. I don't want anyone from my job to hear it. I do work. I do make the ad changes. I don't want everyone at work just asked for the link for this, so.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
Oops.
No one's going to listen. Now we're going to move into Rhysand and him dressing Feyre. For fun, I'm going to make 2 arguments. And Amy and her listeners, you guys get to choose which one you like more. So imagine this as a choose your own literary analysis adventure. Option A. Rhys and Feyre are about to go to the Weavers, and Rhys is physically dressing Feyre. We understand what power and symbolism comes from the clothes you wear, and Rhysand is giving her the only power he is capable of, Illyrian leathers. He wants her to find that same strength that he finds in them. Option B. There is power in what you wear and what it represents. So with Rhysand dressing Feyre and not letting her choose her clothes, not even choosing her own underwear, he is taking her powers when he is giving her a false sense of power. Rather than helping explain how to dress and encouraging her how to learn, he is dressing her, which is very similar to how you dress a child. He is patronizing her. This is not unlike Tamlin dressing Feyre for the wedding and all the spring court gowns. This is Rhysand dressing Feyre to an image he wishes her to be. She is an object to be dressed by both males.
So which one do I like better? I like A better. But which one do I think is more accurate? I think B is more accurate.
Yep.
Because all the time, Rhysand is summoning clothes for Feyre. Doesn't get her input, just picks it and drops it off on the bed or whatever the case is. So I do think it's B. And as we've established earlier, he's selfish.
Oh, yeah, because he gets to touch her then.
Exactly.
He gets to touch her thighs. He gets to do all this stuff. And
cupping the back of her knees was not necessary.
No, I mean, look, I'm pro. It's hot. Don't get me wrong. It's a nice slow burn here, but she just broke up with someone.
Yeah, I remember reading this scene and being like, ooh, I got butterflies on my stomach. But when you really think about it, this is problematic.
Yeah, he could just be like, hey, I need you to step into these and buckle it up. That's it. That's all you got to do.
I'm going to do the left side. You do the right side.
Yeah. She could have even just pulled it up herself.
Right. He could have put on his holster or whatever it is that he's putting on her and been like, this is how you buckle it, and demonstrates on himself.
But then that would give her power to have power on her own.
Exactly. Instead, she needs Rhys to dress her every day now.
I mean, I'm not against that personally, but, still messed up.
It is the opposite of empowering.
It really is. And again, he picks her underwear, which she then chooses, right? Because he holds up the underwear and he's like, ooh, blah, blah, blah. And then she grabs it from him and goes into the bathroom.
Right.
I'd be like, I'm sorry, this is an actual scary thing I'm about to go do. I'm not wearing a lacy thong.
No.
You don't wear
a lacy thong if you're going to be running.
You don't think she was chafing going up that...
the chimney? She was chafing.
Oh, she was chafing hard. The ingrown hairs Feyre must have. Tight leather pants.
Oh my gosh.
And lacy underwear.
This is not what this podcast is about. So I know we've already touched on it, but let's continue to talk about this bowing, kneeling action that's happening. Where once Rhysand made Tamlin bow, Rhys now bows before Feyre. Quote, bow, he'd once ordered Tamlin. And now here he was, on his knees before me. His eyes glinted as if he remembered it too. Now I will recognize that this is an important difference between Tamlin and Rhysand. Rhys is willing to bow before Feyre, even if it's for selfish reasons. And in doing so, he puts himself in a very subservient or reverent pose in which he is giving her some power.
Rhys turns the concept of bowing on its head. When he did it to Tamlin, it was demeaning. And now with Feyre, it is fucking hot as hell.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Oh my god, look, did we just rant about this? Yes.
Is it still hot? Yes.
So hot. Like, he's before her, holding her thighs.
I still don't understand how cupping the back of the knees is sexy, but it's physical touch. I'll give it to him.
We'll go test it out. I would be... Amy, is this sexy?
Come cut the back of my thighs, please.
On your next date, just be like, so what do you want me to do, sexy? I want you to cup the back of my knees. What? I want you to put pants on me.
Rhysand also gives Feyre credit, calling her his salvation when Feyre just assumes she is his huntress and thief. This is in stark contrast to Tamlin. Feyre was Tamlin's salvation, yet he made her feel otherwise.
I would say Tamlin made Feyre feel like he was her salvation to the point where his salvation became Feyre's burden, versus with Rhysand, his salvation becomes Feyre's redemption. Because if Feyre can bring Rhysand salvation, then maybe she's not as worthless as she thought.
I like that.
It's like, it's all a matter of perspective. It depends. Like, if you like the person that you're with, it's a different perspective.
Yeah, it is. And as we're seeing, there's so many similarities between Tamlin and Rhys. They might as well be the same person. And so it is interesting that we're seeing two different sides.
Yeah, because Tamlin's salvation is being able to redeem himself of doing nothing.
Yeah.
Which then, like, Feyre doesn't want to forgive that.
Right.
Versus Rhysand, who gave up everything. Like, of course Feyre wants to help with that because she gave up her humanity.
Exactly. The differences between Rhys and Tamlin are further driven home when Rhys offers to lock Feyre up, put her in dresses, and force her to plan parties, reminding us that though Rhys has similarities to Tamlin, Rhys is not exactly the same.
Rhys continues to attack the lifestyle that I would love. Quote, Rhys says, would you rather I lock you in the House of Wind and stuff you with food and make you wear fine clothes and plan my parties? Like, stop tempting me.
Yeah, that's the trophy wife life. I'm all about it.
Like, stuff you with food? Yes, please. Gladly. Show me the downside.
I mean, as long as he's okay with how much weight I gain, I don't care. I'll do it.
Oh, Rhys would not care at all.
No.
Rhys...
More cushion for the pushing.
Oh, yeah. Rhys would be into it.
Yeah, he would.
Like, Feyre definitely doesn't lose her post-pregnancy weight for a while, and he loves it.
I can see that.
He bites the chub, but in a hot way.
Yeah.
I've also decided that's the same for Azriel.
Oh, yeah. I can see that. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Now, a word from this episode's sponsor. You're going to want to hear this one.
Are you a woman podcaster looking to take your show to the next level? Or are you maybe just starting a podcast and need some guidance?
If the answer is yes to either of these questions, then you need to come to She Podcasts Live this October. She Podcasts Live is a conference taking place in Washington, D.C. this fall, where you'll be able to learn from some of the best female podcasters in the world and get insider tips on how to take your podcast to the next level.
Whether you're a beginner or a pro, this event is for you. Not only will you be able to learn tons of new information, but you'll also be able to network with other amazing podcasters.
Something we love about She Podcasts Live is that they're committed to bringing a diverse and inclusive lineup, and their team works hard to make sure those chosen are 50% women of color, LGBTQIA+, or both.
They also highlight industry experts and leaders in the space, so attendees are exposed to the women at the top.
Register now with the code BTBT for $50 off your registration.
Find all the details at shepodcastslive.com. At this point, we move into Chapter 20, which begins with Rhysand and Feyre entering the wood around the sacred mountain in Prythian, wherein lies the Weaver's cottage. Now, remember Book 1. Feyre spent years in woods around her village, hunting for her and her family's survival. So when Feyre thinks that the wood is, quote, older, more aware than any place she's ever been, this is an important little tidbit of information. We should feel uneasy as the reader, because Feyre knows woods, and this place has this really haunting sort of atmosphere about it.
I would like to take a ghost tour there, please.
Oh, I could see, yeah.
I'm just imagining like Feyre lurking in the woods and over here we have the Weaver's Cottage. Legend says
she kills 1,000 people a year.
Oh, takes photos.
This uneasiness that Feyre feels is going to increase later in the chapter when Feyre observes that, quote, the trees around the clearing near the cottage might very well have been the bars of a cage. This image is eliciting memories from under the mountain, which, by the way, happens to be nearby. And these sorts of memories always are a sign or clue that Feyre's fear is present in her body and threatens to overwhelm her.
The fact that Feyre's not feeling safe or comfortable in the woods, which are normally her safe space, it really speaks volumes about how uncomfortable she is or just how freaky these woods are.
Right, because remember when she returned to the woods of her home in book 1, she was like, wow, why was I ever afraid?
Because those are human woods. These are
exactly
spooky fairy woods.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Before we encounter the Weaver, let's talk about the interaction between Rhys and Feyre.
We're going to talk about sex as power. This is clearly a much more sexy book than A Court of Thorns and Roses. And what we've seen so far is that sex is used as power. Tamlin used it to cling on to Feyre. Feyre used sex with Tamlin as a way to escape, and now Rhys-Anne is using sex here too. I want to get this out of the way. Feyre claims that Rhys is flirting with her to keep her distracted, but let's not pretend that flirting with her is the only way to distract someone. Amy and I distract each other on the regular, and yet we don't flirt with one another.
No, we don't.
A lot of other jokes, a lot of fart jokes.
Lots.
I mean, there's options. Rhys has options. So let's be clear. Despite Rhys's intentions, this is still a very selfish move on his part. Rhys tells Feyre that she can sleep with Cassian if she wants to, because Cassian is probably more interested in fucking her than protecting her. Okay, first, Rhys just diminished any worth that Feyre might have felt as an individual and reduced her to just a sexual object, that she is only a being worthy of sex and not even her own self-preservation, because Cassian clearly doesn't view her as an actual individual. Then Rhys tells Feyre that she could sleep with Cassian to help move on in the physical sense. Let me point out again, it has been days, I'm pretty sure less than a week, since her and Tamlin broke up. Yet Rhys is encouraging Feyre to move on physically. It's because Rhys is testing the waters. He wants to see how likely Feyre is willing to move on from Tamlin in any regard. By doing both of these things, lowering her value as only a sexual object and questioning on whether she's willing to physically move on, Rhys has claimed all the power. Sex is power, and he is not giving Feyre an inch of control.
Reflecting on this conversation, Rhys also tells Feyre that he'll be sure to tell Cassian that she's interested in his advances. But would he actually do that?
Yes.
I don't think so.
I think he would do it while drunk and pissed off.
Okay, I could see that. I think he's too selfish. I think he wants to keep her all to himself. I think he would find a way to get Feyre to turn on Cassian.
Okay, I think I can imagine they're all hanging out, right? And Rhys-Anne's really pissed off because, maybe Feyre turned him down again.
Mm-hmm.
And then he says it in front of everyone. Well, why don't you just go and hook up with him then?
Mm-hmm.
Which is the most immature thing in the entire world. And he's a 500-year-old male.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 33 and I wouldn't pull that shit anymore.
You're not 33.
I'm 32.
You're welcome. I saved you a year.
Woo, I forgot about that. Here's another question I have. Why Cassian?
Why not Azriel?
Exactly.
I don't know the answer to that.
He's probably been in a little of their minds, right? On accident. He's probably seen them being like, oh, she's pretty hot.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just, I don't know, the concept of offering, the concept of challenging her on this, the fact that it's Cassian, it feels a lot more layered.
Yeah, it does.
And I wish I could dissect the layers better than I am right now.
Well, okay, let's think about it this way. And I'm going to talk about this in a different context soon. But for Feyre, violence and love go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
And Cassian has offered to train Feyre physically.
Mm-hmm.
In Rhys's mind, do they then somehow share a connection that he is lacking?
Yeah.
Which is why he's the way he is right now.
Fair. Also, Rhys knows that Azriel has the biggest wingspan.
I wonder if Rhys views Cassian as his biggest threat.
I don't know. Would you actually put her, throw her into your biggest threat, or is Azriel the biggest threat? I mean, everyone knows Azriel's the biggest threat. Get me a zaddy.
Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. My entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk. So as we've discussed, Rhys is testing Feyre on many levels here. There's not only the test at the Weaver's cottage, the whole reason for their field trip, but Rhys is also testing Feyre's level of attraction to him when he's offering up Cassian's services.
Cassian's services.
Did you just see that?
Yeah, I don't know. Is there a 1-800 number I can call for that?
1-800-Cassian.
Services.
I wonder in this moment, are there parallels between Tamlin and Rhys, specifically when we think about Feyre's early time in the Spring Court, when Tamlin said Feyre could go anywhere if she didn't want to stay in his manor?
I can see that, but I would say that the parallel for me is that with Feyre and Tamlin, the dynamic was food equals power, but now with Rhysand, it's sex equals power. But that's not surprising because we connected food to sex before, and this is a hungry, horny bunch.
They are hungry and horny. All of them.
Same. Even when Rhys asks Feyre if she likes the sight of him on his knees, it's done as a way to make her feel uncomfortable, to rile her up. Rhysand was on his knees, but he was still in control. Now, don't get me wrong. All I want in life right now is for a man on his knees and to be in full control. But I'm also not as traumatized as Feyre.
That's fair.
Yeah, she's going through it.
She is going through something. Yet Rhys, knowing this, is choosing to test Feyre, and just the act of testing is a means of him exerting power over her and influencing her actions. I mean, quite frankly, Rhys is lucky Feyre sees this as mere flirting.
Yeah.
But even their flirting is laced with a constant power struggle. Even though they don't physically touch, Rhys uses his powers at this point to elicit a physical response. Quote, "A bit of hollowed out air pushed against me, like a flicker of night." We know night is Rhys. "That power along my bones and blood stirred in answer." When Feyre tries to escape Rhys's taunting power and her physical response to it, he grips her chin and asks, quote, "Did you enjoy the sight of me kneeling before you?" When Feyre tries to be coy, quote, "His answering smile evoked silken sheets and jasmine-scented breezes at midnight."
What a fucking smile. I would love to see what a smile that makes you think of jasmine and silken sheets looks like. Also, silken sheets are not sexy.
No, they're not.
They're slippery.
Yes, they are.
Wouldn't know, never tried, but still, I can imagine. But I also want to point out again that Rhysand is being physically invasive with Feyre. He is grabbing her chin in a very aggressive move. But to grab her and make her look at him, Rhys is treating Feyre like a child again, which doesn't help because he was dressing her like a child just the chapter before.
You're right. And
Yes.
it's infuriating, actually.
I mean, it's one of those moments where like he grabs her chin, looks her in the eyes, being like, "You liked me bowing in front of you." Like,
It's hot,
it is hot.
but problematic.
Grab my chin aggressively, but problematic.
Let's continue with the problem here. I want to suggest that this intrusive thought of silken sheets and jasmine-scented breezes, that's not Feyre. Those intrusive thoughts are from Rhys. I think Rhys planted those textures and scents in her mind because Feyre's senses are currently closed off. She hasn't been using these things. And we know from Thorns and Roses that Feyre is seduced by her senses. This is where I think their flirtation, though I love a good slow burn, goes too far. Rhysand is using his power in their flirtation to upset the power dynamics between him and Feyre. Even Feyre acknowledges, quote, "A dangerous line. One, Rhys was forcing me to walk." Though Feyre rationalizes this as Rhys's way of keeping her distracted from internal and external stressors, does it make the intrusion okay?
I never thought of this as Rhysand putting that in her head, but you're right. Feyre's descriptions are not like that right now because she's dead inside. So how is she suddenly like, "Jasmine smiles, silken sheets"? Rhysand has been known to do that to her, and which you pointed out, and I didn't even realize the fact that she calls, like, what was it, a thing of night coming, like being pushed into her.
Oh, yeah. It's
yes,
Rhys.
it's Rhys.
Yeah, and we know he's capable of this because later in the book, he sends that vision of the lingerie shop into her head.
Yeah.
And it takes her a while to realize that it's him doing it.
He's able to get in there very
easily
without her realizing it.
Yep. Every time I read that, it really bothered me because I'm like, Sarah J. Maas, this is not a description. Nobody thinks of silken sheets when they see someone smile, unless it's Rhysand.
Oh, I was like, Hugh Hefner.
Oh.
Because it's gross.
It is gross.
Is it wrong that I called a dead man gross? He was gross.
He was gross.
I don't regret that.
Now, at this point in time, as readers, we love to love and hate this area because Feyre cannot be honest about the attraction she feels to Rhys. And she translates her physical attraction to him as a desire to attack him instead. Because remember, violence and love are one and the same in Feyre's playbook. Quote, "I stormed after him as silently as I could, intent on tackling him and slamming my fist into his spine." I'm sure she wanted to slam other things into him, not her fist.
It's like his penis. What? That's reversed.
In some ways, this is also Feyre trying to regain power in their dynamic.
It's also Rhysand setting up the precedence with their dynamic because, again, he's the one who started being physical with her. Before we go any further with Feyre entering the cottage, I just want to ask, what's Rhys's endgame here? Like, Feyre's about to go in there. He can't hear her, see her, and he can't really go charge in after her because we've already established that, like, that's against the rules for High Lords to do that. I don't know what his plan B is. Like, I'm not saying that he's not planning because he's planned everything, but it just feels too reckless because, again, this is all done for selfish reasons.
So I have a thought about this, and it might be a little convoluted and it might be a little far-fetched, but go with me here. This ring is Rhys's mother's ring, and it's passed down from female to female in his family. His mother specifically gave it to the Weaver. Is that a pre-existing relationship? Is there more to Rhys's family? And this is a rite of passage for the women in the family. Like, this is something that they always do.
What the hell? Yes, Amy.
So, on some level, Rhys, knowing that Feyre is his mate, he doesn't need a plan B because this is the only woman he's ever going to send in there to go get that ring.
Whoa. Okay. Yes, because we already seen Rhys has a dynamic and a very, I'll call it a slightly more casual dynamic with the bone carver, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's very much, they've been in each other's company before. So, and the Weaver is the bone carver's sister. So it makes sense that there's been some dynamic there. Like, yeah, like the mom wouldn't be all, "Hey, want to give you something for fun."
Right. It's so random, except I don't think it's random.
Yeah, I agree. I'm on board with that.
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. When Feyre approaches the Weaver's cottage, her body falls back on old instincts. Quote, "I avoided any leaves and stones, falling into a pattern of movement that some part of my body, some part that was not born of the High Lords remembered. Like waking up. That's what it felt like. I think that this is a really powerful moment that often gets overshadowed by the encounter with the Weaver. Feyre has been sleeping a lot in this book since it started. She sleeps to avoid emotions, she sleeps to avoid her power, and in some ways, she sleeps to avoid responsibility. Sleep is Feyre's defense mechanism in the face of immortality and not knowing what to do with her life. So here, the very next day, after the first time she's slept through a nightmare and not puked, Feyre is waking up and remembering who she once was. She is a huntress with responsibilities and a path ahead of her. Feyre might not be sure what that looks like exactly, but she knows in this moment it's about proving herself. It is one of determination and maybe even, dare I say, a little bit of hope.
There's something important about this moment happening alone. Feyre didn't need to actually go into the Weaver's place for her to have this realization. All Feyre really needed to do was just be alone. Honestly, she could have just hunted for the cereal and gone through the same stress and everything, and it would have made this whole process a lot easier and stopped a lot of pain from happening.
I agree. I think, honestly, Rhys-Anne gave up on the cereal after he failed twice and was like, nope, we're going to go a different way.
Well, I mean, he was like, I heard you caught a cereal. I tried twice. Like,
and let's not make you try.
Because he knows the cereal knows that they're mates. So, of course, he doesn't want her to do it. But it makes sense for her to go catch a cereal.
Yeah.
You know, Stella, get your groove back type of situation.
Yeah.
I want that fan fiction.
Where she goes and catches a cereal first before.
Yeah, like rather than the Weaver, someone jumps in and is like, hey, the Weaver's really dangerous. You're right. Let's go start somewhere soft, like the cereal. And since you've already done this, and then she finds out that they're mates right then and there.
Oh, it would be a very different story.
Oh, I want that fanfic. Someone please write that.
I'm sure it's out there. So, steeled by this sense of hope or sense of self, Feyre approaches the cottage, which is designed to be, quote, a perfect, pretty trap. A trap designed from a time when humans were prey, now laid for a smarter, immortal sort of game. It is in this moment that Feyre goes from viewing herself as a mouse, foolishly looking for a bit of cheese, to a wolf, the master predator. Before now, other High Fae and High Priestesses like Ianthe have been the ones portrayed as wolves, but Feyre is choosing to view herself as a wolf, ready to play the immortal game the Weaver has set up. This is the beginning of a transformative moment for Feyre, to view herself this way when once she was the sacrificial doe going to slaughter in Amarantha's court. But is Feyre actually ready to take on this role?
Feyre goes from being a super strong wolf to dying real fast. And she does that all the time. Like whenever she's like, I am a wolf. I am dangerous. Hear me roar. And then it's like, no, I'm sorry, I'm trapped. Get me out of here. Like, she jinxes herself all the time.
She does jinx herself all the time. And that's got to wreak havoc on her system.
I'm tired for her.
I am too.
That's why she sleeps all the time.
It's true. So we're finally at the point where Feyre and us as readers finally lay eyes on the Weaver. The Weaver is a collection of contradictions, just as Feyre was in the prologue. I think that this is a clue that the Weaver must be bad, since Feyre has always viewed herself as bad as well. Here are some of the contradictions. The Weaver uses a honeyed voice for an ancient, horrible song. She has thick hair of richest onyx, and she looks young, her gray gown simple but elegant. Yet we know in the next chapter that the Weaver's face is old and disgusting. The wheel the Weaver sits at clatters so merrily, so at odds with her horrible song. In this way, the Weaver is being set up to be the perfect predator, beautiful and alluring from a distance, and drawing her prey in. Feyre is intimidated in the Weaver's presence and nearly forgets herself, constantly having to remind herself that she, Feyre, is a wolf. But Feyre has already started to doubt herself, and by extension, so do we.
Just want to call out here that Sarah J. Maas was probably directly inspired by sirens. In Greek mythology, sirens would lure sailors with their song and beauty until they got close, and then they're like, you're ugly, and then they get shipwrecked and died. But this isn't surprising because SJM uses some Greek mythology here because in the beginning it was a very light sprinkling of Hades and Persephone.
Yeah, that's a common trope, the Hades and Persephone trope.
Yeah.
Which, is not a bad thing. Good literature riffs off good literature.
But I appreciate that it was, which I think she said before, like it is supposed to be like a slight Persephone's Hades thing. But I appreciate then the callback to some more Greek mythology.
Yeah, I do too. Unfortunately, At this point, Feyre starts to hate herself. And this is...
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
It ends with Feyre being a Trojan horse.
Oh my gosh. You're right.
Wow.
Beautiful.
Sorry, couldn't continue. I don't know how we're going to edit that one.
We'll figure it out. So at this point, Feyre has a moment where she hates herself, and this is demonstrated when she compares herself directly to the Weaver. Feyre does this because she feels guilty for enjoying her flirtation with Rhys, though she blames that enjoyment or that joy on Tamlin and her resentment towards Tamlin.
The quote is, "And maybe I resented Tamlin enough in that moment to enjoy that deadly bit of flirtation. Maybe I was as much of a monster as the female before me. Feyre, darling, if spite flirting makes you a monster, then call me Sully and sign me up to Monsters University." Because
How long have you been planning that one?
I have been sitting on that for a while.
Good job. I'm impressed.
Thank you.
Now, all the signs should have shown us that Feyre was not ready for this test.
Sorry. We really just spent the last however many minutes being like, Feyre's not ready.
Yeah. I mean, but she's not.
No.
The signs show us, A, she's close to the sacred mountain, and even mention of the sacred mountain trips her up, and she keeps seeing images that are reminiscent of under the mountain. So, of course, Feyre's at a mental disadvantage.
Feyre's not even ready for the flirting test. She hates herself for it. Rhys is not setting her up for success with this round.
He's making lots of bad judgment
He's
calls.
like, hey, I'm going to test you. Take a nap today. Take 2 naps.
I want that test.
Pass with flying colors. I'm going to stuff you with food and you're going to take a nap.
Oh, please. Feyre even begins to describe her actions in macabre ways. Quote, "My hand was quiet as a final dying breath." Who says that about their hands?
I want to try. I'm looking at my hand right now. I can't see it. I'm just staring at my hand nope, it's still pretty loud.
Nope, yep. Then Feyre thinks of stabbing Rhys in anger, and in doing so, she remembers stabbing the fairies under the mountain and realizes she actually knows what that would feel like to plunge a dagger into a body. Now, this sets her off, right? But I also want to make a note that Feyre has always hated killing. She's done it out of a need to survive. And in this moment, she visualizes killing out of anger. That's an interesting shift in Feyre.
Yeah. It's enjoyable and it's Rhysand.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's sexual.
It is very sexual because who just stabbed Feyre not that long ago in her dream?
Feyre.
Amarantha.
Oh, right. That one too.
And that was very sexual.
Oh, that was a hypersexual dream.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, if you make it that way where it's there's something, you're invading someone with something, right? With the knife. But I never thought of that's the thing that starts to kind of get her on the path of, 1, making her feel like herself, and 2, sexy thoughts of Rhysand. I don't know. She's messed up.
Yeah, it's very confusing right now. As I mentioned earlier, she's confusing her physical attraction with a desire for violence.
Mm-hmm.
But as we continue through this book, we're going to see Feyre's increased level of comfort with killing.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Because it's very different from Thorns and Roses Feyre.
We're going to have to really track as we go forward with our notes, her level of comfort with killing and her level with comfort with Rhysand on a sexual way.
Oh, there is 100% of correlation.
Yeah.
100% of correlation.
Definitely. But we're just going to have to call it out every single time.
Yep. And now we get to the point that I like to call, it's panic time.
At the disco. All right. I regret nothing and everything at the same time. As we go into chapter 21, I just want to say that this is the weirdest chapter. Where we start at the beginning of this chapter and the setting and what's happening and the fact that it ends in the weirdest setting and conversation, it just makes me wonder what the editing process was like for SJM. We start with the Weaver, we end with the Ianthe story.
Yeah, these two things, I forgot that they happened in the same chapter. And so when I reread the chapter, it was like, wait, what? These don't belong together.
They don't belong together. It makes me feel like there was a missing scene. Mm-hmm. And then these two would have been too short of chapters. So she lumped them together.
Yep. I agree. I think something was cut here.
Yeah, it just, there's no flow. I mean, chapters always have some kind of flow to one, a little beginning, middle, end type of thing. And there's nothing about that here.
Yep. I agree. What I will say about the writing in this chapter is something that we haven't talked much about before. Now, there is significance in the structure of words and words on a page that good writing is very cognizant of. And chapter 21 is a good opportunity to kind of nod at how an author chooses to structure their sentences and paragraphs and how that can evoke a reaction or emotion from the reader. In the beginning of chapter 21, as the Weaver notices Feyre and Feyre starts to panic at being trapped in the cottage, Sarah J. Maas uses short sentences, often allowing only one sentence per line. This gives the plot and Feyre's thoughts some speed and urgency that conveys to us that feeling of panic. It's a neat little trick that you will see in good writing.
It also invokes the movement and essence of a mouse, the way that it's scurrying around. Like you said, the sentences are short, and it's I do applaud SJM for this structure. Snaps to her, especially since I just said this is the weirdest chapter. But
but it starts off great. The hints of human Feyre that we saw in the previous chapter are here in full force, and Feyre is a little taken aback by the sensation of what it feels like to be a human and desperate to survive again. Think back to the prologue. The human Feyre wanted to kill the immortal Feyre, but now the two have kind of become one. The human instincts are awakening in order to keep the immortal alive. Feyre even thinks, quote, I did not want to die. I did not want to be eaten. I did not want to go into that sweet darkness. Side note, not only is Feyre panicking because the Weaver is going to eat her, but she also happens to be locked in a cage again. We see again this idea of under the mountain being present for Feyre, and it increases her fear of death. Now, there are so many animal references in chapter 21. So instead of analyzing each and every nuance, I want to look at this chapter from the theme of predator and prey.
This is honestly animal whiplash, as I will call it. We go from Feyre saying that she's not a mouse and she's a wolf, back to being a mouse, and then back to being a wolf. Like I said, anytime Feyre says that she's one thing and not like the other, she goes back to being the other thing, and then she goes back to being the first thing. It just has happened so very quickly.
She has a lot of work to do.
We're honestly lucky she didn't bring in a third animal.
Yeah, no, it's true.
She's like, I am now a parrot, and I shall fly away.
As I mentioned earlier, the Weaver is the ultimate predator. So even though Feyre thinks right now she's a wolf, she's cornered, and she knows she bites when cornered. And so the chase begins, for which Feyre is ill-prepared because she has become so weak and so malnourished. Feyre cannot be the ultimate predator right now, though by seeing herself as the Weaver, Sarah J. Maas has hinted to us that it is possible. Instead, Feyre has allowed herself to be, quote, bent, like some wild horse broken to the bit. Remember the horse reference from episode 1? Feyre is referring to Tamlin and the Spring Court here, and, quite frankly, she blames her weakness on them. In response to being called a mouse by the Weaver and feeling like a fly caught in a spider's web, Feyre tells herself, quote, I was not a pet, not a doll, not an animal. I was a survivor, and I was strong. I could not be weak or helpless again. I could not be broken and tamed. That makes me think of Dr. Seuss. I could not eat green eggs in him or something like that. I could not on a house. I could not with a mouse.
I could not die. I could not fly. I could not say I could, but I could not do.
Should. I think this is the moment of transformation for Feyre. Not only does she master her fears and escape the Weaver, but we're going to see how she transitions from viewing herself as an animal and transposes those views onto others, including Rhysand.
So I totally 100% agree with all of this. Like, this is Feyre's transformation, and not just, oh, I want the old me again. This is completely a new Feyre, because the way she talks about being cornered, and she knows that she's going to bite when she's cornered, and the fact that she's not a pet, not a doll, not an animal, but she has been, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
When was she ever cornered and bit back?
Mm-hmm.
She was always cornered and was like, all right, I guess I'm going to die today. And then just happened to keep living against her own will.
Mm-hmm.
She's been a survivor, but never a fighter like that. This is such a intense revolutionary part for her to realize, like, oh, I want to live and I'm willing to fight to live, which is not what she had before.
You're right. Everything was about getting away, not about fighting back.
Yeah.
Feyre's finally making an appearance here.
I agree, because what happens when she goes back to Velaris, she asks Cassian to start training her because she never wants to be like this again.
Yeah, Feyre's here. So I have to be like, she's back, bitch, but she was never here. She was never here to begin with.
She finally showed up to the party.
Sorry, guys, a little late.
This transformation that takes place in Feyre is solidified in 2 instances of free-falling that bookend Rhys's and Feyre's return to Velaris and the House of Wind. When Rhysand winnows himself and Feyre back to Velaris and the House of Wind, they, quote, free fell, and I, Feyre, didn't have breath to scream. The moment is brief before Rhys uses his wings and glides them into the war room. As soon as Feyre thinks that she wants a bath, Rhys flies them out the windows again, and the 2 of them, quote, free fell for 5 thunderous wild heartbeats. Unlike other instances of free falling so far in the book, Feyre does not have much of a mental reaction to these moments. Though her body reacts, she is not in her head about the fear of falling or death. Instead, Feyre waits and trusts Rhys to guide her or winnow her to safety. It is a brief, beautiful glimpse at a change that is taking place in Feyre, who is becoming grounded in purpose again, and this purpose is aided by Rhysand.
That gives me warm, fuzzy feelings.
Isn't it kind of nice?
Yeah,
After we've harped on Rhysand this entire episode.
Oh, we shit on him so hard on this episode.
We do.
We took some Dieter's tea. And then...
He is a deeply flawed character.
Yeah.
But I think these 2 bring out the best in each other.
Yes. I don't know if I said this on the podcast, but I know I was talking to you about Rhysand not being a true morally gray character. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, I want my characters more gray than this. But as we've been dissecting him, he is so gray. He is so flawed. Like, I know we as a community tend to romanticize him, but there is a lot of issues to him. But that doesn't make it bad, right? Like, that just means he's a complex character, and we celebrate that here.
Yes, we do. Probably in future episodes. Less so right now.
I mean, eventually, celebration.
Eventually.
Well, I mean, I'm celebrating the fact that, you know, he's a interesting guy.
He's interesting. He's giving Feyre purpose, and she's learning to trust him.
And he's willing to be on his knees for her.
Yeah. Any guy who's willing to be on his knees for me.
A-okay.
He's a keeper. As I mentioned earlier, Feyre's change is also emphasized by the fact that she's willing to train with both Cassian and Rhys to become both physically and mentally more capable of fighting to defend herself. These are things she's been denied, and she's denied herself for a very, very long time up until this point.
Now I'm going to talk about the theme of cleanliness. When Feyre arrives at the House of Wind, it says, quote, grease. I had the grease and hair of people on me. I vomited all over the floor. Cassian swore, but Amren waved a hand and it was instantly gone, along with the mess on me. But I could still feel the ghost of it there, the remnants of people, the mortar of those bricks. This is probably one of my favorite few sentences in the book so far. I just feel like there's a lot to unpack here. I appreciate how much work is done in a short amount of time. Let's unpack. First is guilt. Feyre has guilt, obviously, as we've discussed over and over again, about her feeling like she's gotten people killed and then killing people herself. Fae, not people. Now she's covered in actual hair and fat from the dead. This is her own hell manifested onto her skin. Then we have vomiting. Feyre throws up, which is something we've discussed to be considered very human. And it's something that she's done only privately so far. Cassian reacts with a curse, but it's Feyre displaying her humanity and vulnerability to everyone. Then we have Amren cleaning it. I think it's amazing that it's Amren, the most non-human Fae creature there, and yet she's there to help Feyre with her humanity. And then finally, the idea of not feeling clean. Feyre is cleaned, aka her sins have been pardoned, but it's not enough. She needs to bathe in actual water, which goes into our post-season 1 interview with Nicole, where we discuss bathing and how it's basically baptismal. That's why Feyre doesn't feel clean and needs a bath. She's trying to cleanse her own sins.
I love this point because, as we've seen from everyone around her, everyone's pardoned Feyre for the fairies that she had to kill under the mountain. Mm-hmm. But Feyre hasn't. And that's symbolic here. It's symbolized here of this idea that Amren has cleaned Feyre, just like everyone has pardoned Feyre. Mm-hmm. But Feyre doesn't feel clean. Feyre still feels guilt.
Yeah.
And that's really beautiful.
It is beautiful. Good job, Sarah J. Maas.
And that's why Feyre is obsessed with baths the rest of this book.
Yep, it's true.
The use of animal references appears again in earnest when Feyre and Rhysand are back at the townhouse. Rhysand is now a mountain cat, purring when Feyre tries to enter his mental shields to view his memories. Ianthe, in Rhysand's memory, is a snake, baiting Rhysand, but then he becomes the asp and Ianthe the mouse when she attempts to assault him. Now, I need to take a moment to put out a trigger warning for the theme of sexual assault. Let's ask ourselves this question. Why is the memory of Ianthe and Rhysand important? I really struggle with this scene for a number of reasons. First off, we know Ianthe's a bad player. We have had enough clues up until this point to make it clear Ianthe sucks. Do we really need this scene to know that she sucks? Or is this scene less about Ianthe and more about developing empathy for Rhysand? We see how violently he reacts to nearly being assaulted, which makes his willingness to be Amarantha's sex slave even more harrowing. It also shows the level of self-sacrifice Rhysand is willing to go in order to protect those he loves, which mirrors Feyre's experience as well.
It does show that Rhysand continues to be the victim of sexual assault from Ianthe and Amarantha, and just because he was able to stop Ianthe from fighting back doesn't mean that it wasn't an attempt of sexual assault.
But is the whole thing necessary?
I don't think it's necessary. I feel like it's cheap writing from Sarah J. Maas. I think that when we got A Court of Thorns and Roses and it was revealed that Rhysand was, I hate even calling him Amarantha's whore because he was her victim, right?
Yeah, right.
Like we were able to pick up the fact that this strong, strapping male was a victim of sexual assault. And I feel like that was one of the most complex layers to the previous story, and it was important. And again, I want to emphasize, like, sexual assault is important. How it is depicted in literature is extremely important. I feel like it's SJM just trying to replicate it for the sake of replicating it.
Mm-hmm. So I agree with you, or I agreed with you, until I had this thought while we were prepping. A lot of Mist and Fury is about the trauma these characters have undergone and how that trauma manifests in their lives afterward.
Mm-hmm.
And in Ianthe's case, Rhysand was able to fight back. In Amarantha's case, Rhysand was not. And so he does still have unresolved trauma. And I think that this reminder, though I agree a little bit cheap, I think it's here because it's reminding us that Rhys has been overpowered by sex. Sex as power has been used against him.
True.
So to what extent is his trauma manifesting in him trying to use sex as power over Feyre?
Mm-hmm.
It's just a thought I have.
Interesting. So it's not like what we're seeing here is meant for us to feel bad for him, but make us understand he's going to do this to her? No, I didn't get that.
Kind of. I think it's a mix of all of it. I think that we're meant to feel more empathy for Rhys.
Mm-hmm.
Just in case we forgot, he was a victim of sexual assault. Let's remind you again.
Mm-hmm.
I think that also, though, it shows us that Rhys is traumatized and he has unresolved trauma.
Oh, like maybe this memory of Ianthe wouldn't be so hard for him had he not gone with 50 years of abuse from Amarantha.
Exactly.
Gotcha. And that's a fair point. I'm sure there's a fancier word for it, but it's almost like reverse trauma or like in the past trauma, hindsight trauma. I don't know, where something that you went through more recently impacts a memory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's made the worse because of something that's happened before almost.
Yeah, like I'm sure after that happened, he probably went to Cassian and Azriel and was like, I can't believe she came into my room type thing. But now with the lens of being a sexual assault victim, it now has a lot more importance.
I think so.
That's fair.
I don't know if I've convinced myself, but that was the thought I had.
You convinced me.
Okay. Yay!
Yeah. I mean, it'd be interesting to see if that's what SJM was working towards, but again, that's not a matter of what she's working towards. It's a matter of how we're interpreting and analyzing the literature and the text. And regardless of what SJM tried to do, I think you did it. You did it. Proud of you.
You did it.
You did it. Listeners, you did it. Now we're going to go into some breadcrumbs. From chapter 19, quote, Claire Better's broken and nailed body flashed in my vision. Amarantha had been one of his commanders, just one of many. The Highburn King had to be horrible beyond reckoning to be her master. If these people got their hands on my sisters, it's like famous last words, Feyre, you are doing this to yourself.
She totally jinxed it.
Like, stop it.
From chapter 20, Rhys says, if you survive this test, Feyre, you seem pleased by the idea that I won't. Rhys, quite the opposite, Feyre. Though this exchange may seem like Rhys saying he would not be happy if she died because he needs her to help read the Book of Breathings, what he's really saying here is that he would not be happy if she died because Feyre is his mate.
Also in chapter 20, quote, "Perhaps it would be a blessing if I were indeed not the one to track the book, if today was not the start of what was sure to be a slew of miseries. Feyre is learning from Rhys and is now predicting her own future. The couple that predicts together stays together."
Our last breadcrumb for this week, chapter 21, quote, "The high priestesses have burrowed into a few of the courts, and yet, during those 50 years, they escaped. They remained hidden. I would not be surprised if Ianthe sought to establish a foothold in the Spring Court." I don't think I have to explain this.
I know.
Ianthe equals bad.
Like, we're only on page 230, people. You guys should have figured it out by now.
I know. I missed it.
I mean, there's why they're breadcrumbs.
Yep.
Right? So at the beginning of this episode, we asked, is Rhysand selfish and are his actions redeemable? Amy, take the first stab at this.
100%. Rhysand's actions are selfish. I dare say I think he is in love or loves Feyre to whatever extent he knows what love to be.
Mm-hmm.
And he wants her. He is impatient for her to move on from Tamlin.
Mm-hmm.
He has exhibited tendencies to view her as a possession just as Tamlin did. And so his actions are fueled by a desire for her to move on and for her to pick him. It's like miscongeniality. Pick. Oh, no, not miscongeniality. It's like Grey's Anatomy.
Me. Love
pick
me.
Love
choose me.
Exactly. So they are 100% selfish. And as we discussed, he is a morally gray character. And this is what morally gray characters do. Are his actions redeemable? I think the whole fandom would say yes.
I'm curious because we're still analyzing, as we go forward. And to some extent, they must be because Feyre finds them redeemable, whether they actually are or not. I will say he's experiencing growth. He's not the same man he was at the beginning of this book.
Right. And by the end of the book, he won't be the same man that he is currently.
Yeah.
But I do think that there's still more growth to take place. And to your point, is an action redeemable? Or does it even matter if the action's redeemable if his mate forgives him?
And that's we all know that that's what's ultimately going to happen, is that she's going to just sweep this all away and say, okay, that was real bad. Don't do that again. I would too. I'm not going to pretend like I have any kind of moral high ground here, but it's here we are analyzing. And once you start reviewing the text, it's wow, this is not good.
Right. But at the same time, is this not human nature? Don't we all accept things we shouldn't when we're in love with someone?
Boy, don't I.
I was talking in the general.
Sorry, we.
I think, well, you've said that this book is a breakup story.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also, what am I willing to accept in a relationship? Because we have two men who are almost identical.
Yep.
And Feyre accepts one and rejects the other, ultimately. And it's because she couldn't tolerate what Tamlin was not able to give her. And she is able to tolerate what Rhysand does or does not give to her.
I mean, it comes back down to once you're going through a breakup and you're reflecting on, you do the postmortem on the relationship. The question is, okay, well, how do I need to be loved? And Rhysand does know how to love Feyre the way that Feyre needs to be loved. We can argue, or not argue, but we can discuss all day long why he has those insights to her that maybe are good or bad. But at the end of the day, they're mates. And they work well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those all's well that ends well, but I'm in a new hell. Every time you double cross my mind. Okay, that's all. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Book Talk for Book Talk. We encourage you to rate and subscribe to our show on your preferred podcast listening platform. Next week, we'll be exploring chapters 22 through 27 of A Court in Mist and Fury.
We would love to hear your thoughts based on today's conversation. You can submit your comments to our form at booktalkforbooktalk.com for a chance to have your feedback discussed during a weekly mini episode.
If you are enjoying the podcast, visit our website, booktalkforbooktalk.com, to view our latest merch and to learn about supporting the show through Patreon, Ko-Fi, or Venmo.
Or find us on TikTok and Instagram at the handle booktalkforbooktalk.
Bye.
Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because you know I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. Like, my entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk.